Tonight, rolling out the red carpet, President Trump welcomes Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House. This is the United Nations Security Council makes a major step in backing the president's Gaza peace plan. Our panel is with us to discuss. And wartime readiness.
Our objective is simple: transform the entire acquisition system to operate on a wartime footing.
The Secretary of War announces new plans to cut the red tape on how America built its weapons. Our full report, all this and more, tonight on Faith Nation. Cannons, a military flyover, and a royal welcome at the White House. President Trump rolls out the red carpet for the Saudi Crown Prince. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. The Saudi leader, Mohammed bin Salman, in Washington today, greeted with a lavish ceremony, much like the welcome President Trump received when he visited the Middle East earlier this year. On the agenda, business deals, including the sale of U.S.-made F-35 fighter jets, and the work to make Saudi Arabia part of the Abraham Accords, a diplomatic alliance between Israel and several Arab nations. Meanwhile, on the other side of Washington today, survivors rallying in celebration of the likely release of the Epstein files, a step closer to justice they say has been denied for too long. And those are just two of the stories dominating Washington right now. Here to help us break it all down, senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. Gentlemen, great to have you with us this Tuesday. So Kelly, let's start with the Crown Prince. You know, a lot of pomp and pageantry with that welcome today. What is the president hoping to accomplish here, and how does all of this ultimately affect Israel?
Well, as you mentioned, Jenna, good evening to you, first of all. It was quite a ceremony today when the president actually gave the welcome mat, a beautiful welcome mat for Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And what the president was trying to show the world is his relationship with MBS and how long they have known each other, and their relationship in terms of cutting more deals to benefit, what the president said, the American people. And even going so far as to say that the nearly $1 trillion that MBS has offered, he offered a full $600 billion. The president went on to say, hopefully we can get him to $1 trillion. MBS did not move away from that notion of putting $1 trillion up, and that's something that the president says is good for the national security, that will create many jobs for the American people, which he believes will bode well for the future of America's economy and its affordability.
You know, Kelly, things did get a little testy during an exchange about the Saudis' involvement in the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it got testy, and the president defended MBS. And as you know, U.S. intelligence reports based on what happened to Jamal Khashoggi stated that the Crown Prince actually ordered the hit on Khashoggi, and the president pushed back on that and said that the relationships between the two men are solid, and that he really got testy with the information that the reporter was asking. And basically, the president has moved on, said that's the closed history. And so they've moved on to cement this relationship between MBS and the president and the United States and Saudi Arabia, so much so that the president is looking to get a deal that would create the Saudi Arabia government to sign on to the Abraham Accords, and with that bring about some peace and stability in the Middle East. But MBS wants to be sure that if he's going to sign on to the Abraham Accords, that he has to see a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And that's something right now the president is not in favor of.
Yeah. We will see. Meanwhile, David, the UN Security Council voted to actually endorse a Trump-backed plan that could eventually lead to the creation of a Palestinian state. David, why is it so important for the president to see this Mideast agreement through to the end, and how important are the Saudis here when it comes to completing this deal? Kelly kind of was getting there.
Sure. I mean, look, Saudi Arabia crucial in all of this. So, of course, are Turkey and Qatar and many of Egypt, and just go Jordan. Can I go down the list there in the Middle East? And obviously, it's important for the president because, that he wants to get to that phase two. The problem with phase two is that phase one isn't quite over yet because Hamas isn't disarming. And so, you have this big UN Security Council vote, and great, as they like to say, knock your socks off. But the problem is that if Hamas doesn't disarm, who's going to do the disarming? And apparently that's going to be this international stabilization force made up of many of those Arab-led countries. And so are you going to have Arab-led countries going into Gaza to disarm Hamas? Hey, someone give me a call and let me know how that works out in a few months. I mean, that is a big stumbling block here.
Yeah. Kelly, there are reports the White House is, just shifting gears here, meeting with clergy linked to the Russian Orthodox Church. What can you tell us about that, Kelly, and maybe the concerns it raises for the Ukrainian people?
Well, I tell you, when we heard about this story, I started doing some digging, and some of my sources at the White House have stated that the president is moving forward with this meeting and that he has all of the good counsel that he needs for going into a meeting like this. It is problematic for the Ukrainian people, particularly given the fact that the Russian Orthodox Church has actually been working with the Russian government. In fact, the ambassador of Ukraine basically has cited that the Russian Orthodox Church is actually a part of the state government of Russia. And as we know, Vladimir Putin is the head of all of that. And Putin continues to create more havoc and more death and destruction for the people of Ukraine. So one could arguably understand why Ukrainians are concerned about this meeting that's upcoming between the President of the United States, just the White House alone, meeting with members of the Russian Orthodox clergy. Now, my source would not tell me what's going to go on with that kind of meeting, other than the fact that it is a meeting that will likely take place and the president will have full knowledge of what has to take place and transpire in that meeting. So it remains to be seen. The president did say today, however, that he wants to get a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, and went on to state again publicly that he's very upset with Vladimir Putin, thought the deal would have been done by now, and it's really up to Vladimir Putin to get this deal done.
Yeah, it seems like Putin is playing the long game here. Well, on the Epstein files, David, it looks like a bill to release all of them could make it to the president's desk. President Trump says he will sign it, hoping to get the country to move away from what he calls a Democratic hoax and start focusing on the GOP's and his accomplishments. David, will releasing the files move the conversation forward?
Well, the White House sure hopes so. I mean, what a reversal here, Jenna. I mean, this is like my New York Jets being in last place, and I wake up the next morning and they're in first place. I mean, that's how much of a reversal this was. But look, I mean, in politics, you know the deal, right? When the train is starting to leave the station, you get on board that train. And then let's be honest. I mean, the president might not want to hear this, and the White House might not want to hear this. But that's exactly what happened. There were going to be at least a couple of hundred Republicans that were going to vote for this discharge petition later this evening. And indeed, the president saw that and said he couldn't convince anybody to not vote against it, pretty much, and said, I got to get on board. And so away we go. And now we look to the Senate eventually to see if Senator Thune, the majority leader there, will bring it up. It looks like he probably will, because President Trump, as you say, has signaled that he will sign the bill. It's interesting politics for sure, and it's something that the White House really does want to move past quickly. Well, this would be the quickest way to do it. But what an unforced error. Talk about an unforced error in bold and 72 font. I think we found our example.
Yeah, well, it's created a lot of tension, too, within the Republican Party, so there's that as well. All right, David and Kelly, thank you both. Well, the Pentagon is hitting reset on how America builds its weapons. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. cannot afford years-long delays or red tape as global threats rise. He's calling for a wartime-style production push, one that moves faster, takes more risks, and demands more from defense contractors. Here's National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke.
Secretary Hegseth says the Pentagon can't keep relying on a slow peacetime approach to building weapons. He wants a system built for speed, one that delivers capabilities as quickly as threats emerge.
Our objective is simple. Transform the entire acquisition system to operate on a wartime footing.
Hegseth says that starts with tearing up decades of Pentagon red tape and making weapons delivery the priority, even if the systems aren't flawless.
By taking greater calculated risk in how we build, buy, and maintain our systems, we will gain speed to more quickly provide capabilities to the battlefield.
These changes come in response to what's seen as a defense production crisis. Multiple international conflicts exposing weaknesses in the U.S. industrial base, slowed down by factory backlogs, supply shortages, and a depletion of skilled workers. This new model leans heavily on buying commercial products off the shelf that can be quickly adapted for military use.
Imagine being able to swap parts or software of a critical munition without needing to, completely redesign the missile. It's common sense, but we're not doing it.
Brian Clark, a senior fellow with the Hudson Institute, says this would upend how major defense contractors have worked for decades. But he points out the old way of doing business is unable to keep up with today's threats.
If you're only able to tap into the defense industrial base, it's only big enough to support your peacetime needs because you're not going to pay extra money to have extra factories sitting around idle. But if you have commercial suppliers that have other customers and other things they're doing, you can spin them up in wartime to be able to deliver the kind of weapons and airplanes and ships and things you need for the wartime need. Sort of like we did World War II, where a lot of commercial factories were repurposed for military production.
Experts agree this shift is key if the U.S. wants to retain its advantage on the battlefield.
We don't have that luxury of time anymore, so we have to continually be adapting to prepare for the kinds of threats that are emerging on an almost weekly basis from our overseas rivals and adversaries.
Conflicts in both Eastern Europe and the Middle East are providing real-time feedback on U.S. systems, highlighting what works and what's become obsolete.
We are at war, at least at arm's length, right? So our systems are being used in Ukraine to go fight the Russians. And then in the Middle East, the Navy would say we definitely were at war over the last year because they faced the most intense air battles since World War II from the Houthis and the Iranians, which that was a wake-up call for them to say even these relatively small actors can access commercial technology and make very effective weapons that will stress out our high-end missile defense systems, which performed very well.
If these reforms work, experts predict we'll see programs launched more frequently and canceled faster, with smaller firms competing alongside defense giants. Because in modern warfare, speed is survival, and the U.S. can no longer afford to operate at a peacetime pace. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Caitlin. And coming up, the battle over transgender athletes heads to the Supreme Court. Welcome back. A legal fight over pre-game prayer continues for one Florida Christian school after the Supreme Court declined to take up the case. Cambridge Christian School asked the Supreme Court to overturn its ruling from 2000 that found student-led and initiated prayer at football games unconstitutional. They wanted to broadcast a pre-game prayer over the stadium loudspeaker before a championship football game. But in declining to take up the appeal from the school, the court's 25-year-old decision will remain in place. Well, the Supreme Court is stepping into a growing national clash over transgender athletes and state laws that restrict sports participation based on biological sex. This term, justices will hear two cases that could reshape how schools nationwide balance fairness and inclusion in athletics. CBN's Tara Mergener explains.
The cases focus on whether these laws in Idaho and West Virginia violate federal protections. Supporters say the measures preserve fairness and competition, while opponents argue they discriminate and violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and Title IX. Idaho's legal fight began with one runner.
I was just feeling overwhelmed at the amount of anti-LGBT discrimination.
In 2020, the state passed the nation's first law requiring athletes to compete by biological sex.
To provide those opportunities that we have had for almost the last 50 years.
Transgender runner Lindsay Heacock sued after being barred from trying out for the women's cross-country team at Boise State.
It was just preposterous and unfair for us to allow boys to be participating in these girl sports.
Lower courts blocked Idaho's Fairness in Women's Sports Act.
It would be her first opportunity to compete on the women's team since she started transitioning,
allowing Hecox to compete for several seasons.
A transgender woman in Idaho dropped her legal challenge.
Then in September, Hecox requested a dismissal. After the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, she cited that personal challenges led to her exit from women's collegiate sports. A federal judge, however, denied her motion. State officials, joined by 2 former Idaho State University runners, are asking the court to decide whether states can enforce laws like Idaho's nationwide.
The fact that biological males are still beating females in their own sport is insane, and the only way it's going to stop is if we speak up.
The student, Becky Pepper Jackson, has been the center of various legal battles throughout the last 4 years.
West Virginia cannot stop a trans girl from playing on the girls' sports team.
The West Virginia case centers on Becky Pepper Jackson, a middle schooler barred from girls cross country.
In 2023, our state passed a law called the Save Women's Sports Act, which essentially says that if you're going to play sports in West Virginia, you have to play against people that share your biological characteristics.
Like Idaho, lower courts blocked the ban, allowing Jackson to compete. Both states argue they, not federal courts, should set sports rules, citing long-accepted separate teams.
Men are coming into women's sports and taking away podium slots, scholarships. Just in the West Virginia case alone, since the male athlete there started participating, he's taken away over 400 slots of women and displaced girls 1,100 times. So just think about that.
Athletes nationwide are speaking out, including former NCAA volleyball player Macy Petty, who faced a transgender opponent spiking 80-mile-per-hour balls.
This male athlete used his biological advantage and hit the ball into our faces over and over again, completely humiliating us in front of these college scouts.
In Maine, Cassidy Carlisle lost high school skiing championships to a biological male.
We're not telling someone they can't compete in their sport. We're telling them that there is a fair and equal category for them to compete in.
And at least 27 states now restrict transgender students from girls' sports.
We do need some sort of rules here. It can't be just a free-for-all that anyone gets to participate in whatever sport they like. But I do think that rules can be different based on what is the sport and what is the age and what is the level of competition.
The ACLU, representing both plaintiffs, insists and harmful.
When it comes to sports, obviously that's a context in which we allow sex-separated teams, but we can't do that in a way that takes a vulnerable minority and it just excludes them from it entirely.
Meanwhile, major sports organizations, including the NCAA, are also tightening eligibility rules.
We've seen even the International Olympic Committee and the NCAA start to rethink some of their policies. That's a good indicator that there are only so many lies that you can ask the public to believe before they finally take a step back and say, we'd really think you ought to reconsider this.
What the court decides this term could clarify how civil rights protections apply to transgender students, a question it hasn't yet fully answered. The Trump administration is siding with Idaho and West Virginia. A Supreme Court decision is expected by June. Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. And up next, 1 billion downloads and counting, celebrating the major milestone, spreading God's word around the world. Welcome back. More people than ever are turning to the Bible. Sales are up with close to 20 million purchased in the U.S. this year. And here's more good news. The YouVersion Bible app just hit 1 billion installs. My co-anchor John Jessup reports from the celebration in Oklahoma City.
Last month, fans of the Oklahoma City Thunder lit up the Paycom Center celebrating the team's 2025 NBA championship at the season opener. Monday night, thousands packed the arena again, not for a basketball game, but to celebrate the Bible. This event was planned to mark a milestone, 1 billion downloads since the launch of the YouVersion Bible app back in 2008. Users and believers from all over the world came for a night of worship, reflection, and thanks, and dreaming about what's in store for the future of the app and Bible engagement. Now, if you couldn't attend or catch the live stream, here are some of the sights and sounds, including faces you may recognize.
There is nothing more important on the earth than the Word of God.
And we were planning this, and I said, I really don't know any other response but for us to worship.
I'm currently in a Bible plan right now that I'm walking through daily, and it has just brought me closer to God. I really love listening to it and listening and reading it at the same time. I'm keeps me focused. I have that ADHD.
Jesus, he changed my life, and his word is true. I seek wisdom because I don't have it all. I don't have it all figured out.
About 5 years ago, I was real bad in my addiction, substance abuse, and I went to church and then a Bible app, slowly got a relationship with Christ, and I love it.
Our vision is God's word. Everyone, everywhere, and every day.
The movement doesn't stop here. YouVersion and its partners have teamed up to mark this November as Global Bible Month. Different ministries coming together to get people to read the Bible daily for 30 days. 2.5 billion people have signed that pledge. John Jessup, CBN News, reporting in Oklahoma City.
Very cool. Thank you, John. Still ahead, how a Kansas City nonprofit is supporting families in need this season. Finally tonight, a group of nonprofits are stepping up to the plate and filling people's plates this Thanksgiving. The Kansas City chapter of Slow Food USA is partnering with local businesses to help families in need, donating $5,000 and securing 300 turkeys from a Kansas City-based grocer. The group is dispersing about 10,000 pounds of food a day to hand out to different local organizations, helping feed those in need. The founder of Slow Food KC says it's great to see businesses willing to help out others.
We want to support our local farmers. We want to support our local members. But not only that, we want to give back to the community. And this is our way of giving back, especially with Thanksgiving. That doesn't get any better.
Doesn't get any better. And new partners are still reaching out, they say, wanting to help make sure that everyone has food on their plates this holiday season. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.